So I walk in on my cousin and my boyfriend doing the dirty on her couch. They quickly get up from the couch and get dressed. Of course, by that time, I'm in hysterics. I'm crying and yelling. My boyfriend instantly got on his knees and begged me for forgiveness. I went up to my cousin and I punched her right in the face. She wasn't expecting that. And I said, well, this is the guy that you've been dating, isn't it? She said yes, and that she was just trying to find the best way to tell me. And so she just thought the best way to tell me was to get me to walk in on her and him doing the dirty. I punched her again. My boyfriend came to her rescue though. Instantly went into hero mode, which made me even angrier, so I punched him too. I stormed out of her house and went back to my house. Well, I told my parents everything. And my dad went over to my uncle's house, my cousin's dad, and he told him everything. She was about to turn 19, so he took away her phone and her car. And I get a phone call from my ex, come back for part 3.
So when I was a sophomore in high school, I had this teacher who would only let the students in her class use the restroom one time per semester. Well, one day I raised my hand and I was like, excuse me, I don't remember her name. Can I please use the restroom? And she was like, no, you can't because you've already used the restroom in my class this semester. Well, excuse me, you can't dictate my bladder. So I'm like all frustrated and I started secretly texting my mom because I wasn't allowed to use my phone in class. And I was like, Mom, I'm sitting in class right now. My teacher won't let me use the restroom. And she was like, I'll take care of it for you. And I was like, okay. So like 5 minutes goes by and all of a sudden my teacher's phone starts ringing and she walks up to it and answers it and she's like, hello? Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then she walks up to me like so angry and she like slams the pass on my desk and she was like, since you have to go that bad. And I was like, yeah, I really do. Thanks. And I got up and left. I didn't even have to go to the bathroom. It was just the principle of it. I just roamed the halls.
Extremely toxic best friend story time. So when I was in 8th grade, there was this boy. And this boy would go around telling almost every girl that he liked her. And I was one of those girls. And he would do stuff with all of us. And there were like 11 of us. So we all hated each other. Especially this one girl, and we're gonna call her Abby. And every time we saw each other, we would be super mean to each other. Well, a year passed, we stopped talking to this kid. And I bumped into her at homecoming and basically apologized. So after that, we became best friends. And everything was good until every time I told her about a guy, she would start talking to them. Like this one boy that I was Snapchatting and talking to, she accidentally sent nudes to him and said, oh, sorry, I meant to send them to my boyfriend. So then she called one of my other best friends and said, no, it actually wasn't an accident. And of course he told me because he was my best friend. So I was like, whatever, and stopped talking to the boy. And she did it again, like for part 2.
I was ringing up a dad and son, and the first thing I noticed about them is they were both wearing t-shirts with fish on them, so I knew they were probably used to catching shit, and I was definitely not about to let them catch an attitude. So the dad stopped me as I was ringing things up and he said, whoa, 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 that's supposed to be on sale. And I was like, oh, okay, just let me rescan it. And so I rescanned it and the price was just like my weight. It just wasn't getting any lower. So I looked at him and I was like, this price is stagnant. And he was like, okay, we'll get someone else over here. So my coworker came over and she scanned the item and manually entered the item number and the price just wasn't moving. And then the dad decided to elbow the son and go, haha, how many women does it take to scan an item? And then he elbowed him again and decided to repeat the joke. And I was just sitting there like, dang, you about to bruise his ribs. So then the dad took us to where he saw the sale sign and lo and behold, there was a sale sign, but it was for a completely different product. So I looked at him and I said, see, this sign is actually for a different product as you can see printed on here. And then I elbowed my coworker and said, haha, how many men does it take to read a sign?
Today at work, I was trying to call my wife, but for some reason, my phone calls weren't getting through to her. So I used one of my coworkers' phones to dial my house number and call home. So I call home and a sweet voice answers the phone. It's my daughter. I go, hey, cutie, how you doing? She goes, hey, daddy, what's up? And I go, I'm just at work. What are you and mommy doing? She says, well, I just finished lunch and mommy's upstairs. I go, cutie, what's mommy doing upstairs? She goes, she's with Uncle Paul. And I go, Uncle Paul? We don't have an Uncle Paul. What do you mean? She's like, yeah, she's with Uncle Paul. They're upstairs in their room. So I'm like, cutie, that doesn't sound right. So what I want you to do is I want you to leave the phone on the kitchen table, go upstairs to your mommy's room and say, hey, daddy just pulled in the driveway, and tell me what happens, all right? Did it, and like a minute later, she comes back and picks up the phone and goes, okay, daddy, I did it. And I go, okay, what happened? She goes, well, mommy came running out of her room naked, and she tripped down the stairs and bumped her head, and now she can't get up. So I was like, what about the other guy? And she goes, well, Uncle Paul tried to jump out of the window into the pool, but he missed and hit the floor. Now he won't wake up. So I was like, we don't have a pool. Then I look at the phone number and I was like, oh, sorry, wrong number.
Story time about the craziest thing I saw while working at a mental health facility. I work in a mental health facility as a psychiatric technician. My job is to help people with mental health distress by providing emotional support, helping develop positive coping skills, and provide medical attention. Some of the individuals that I treat have severe mental illness, which can lead to violence. One day I was assigned to a patient that I'll never forget. He was on a 24-hour observation because he was self-harming and deemed high risk. He had tried to harm others earlier in the day, so he was locked into a padded room with only a bed, a bathroom, and a tear-proof blanket. I was assigned to watch him for the day from outside of the room to ensure that he wouldn't harm himself until he could be seen by a doctor. He was talking about things that made absolutely no sense, running around in circles inside of the room and asking me if I was Jesus. He would start screaming at the top of his lungs about random things, curse at me 1 minute and apologize the next, and kept spinning on the window just to wipe it off a few seconds later. I attempted to calm him down, but he was on a rampage. At one point, he turned his back to me and appeared to be rubbing his eye for some time. However, when he turned around, I almost passed out. He had ripped his eyeball completely out of the socket and began tossing it up and down in the air while calmly singing to himself. The situation only got worse from here.
Story time, Tinder edition. Okay, the story blew up on Twitter like a while ago, but I'm just gonna retell it because it's very informational. So there was this guy and this girl, and they met through Tinder, and then they met up and they went on this date. And they were out at dinner, and then she starts not feeling so well. And then she says, I really need to go home. And he says, yeah, I'll drive you home. And she says, okay. So then they get to her house, and then she starts feeling better. So then she says, do you want to come in for some coffee? And then he says, yeah, sure. So they go inside, they have their coffee, and then she doesn't feel well again. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't feel well again. I think you really need to leave. And he's like, okay. And he leaves. And then she goes to bed, and in the middle of the night, she wakes up, and she hears this noise down in her kitchen. And so she locks her door, and she calls the cop. And the 911 operator is just on the other line saying, can you just stay on the line until the cops get there? And then the cops get there, and they're like, the door is locked. Like, we don't think anyone's inside. And she's like, I promise you, someone's inside my house. I can hear them. She says, you have my permission to break down the door. So she's still up in her room, and then she hears the cops break down the door. And then she hears some wrestling and some fighting. Part 2 coming now.
My daughter Savannah is the CEO of faking illness to get out of school. So when she does not feel like being there, she will go to the nurse's office and complain to them that she is really not feeling good so that they call me and I have to go get her. Well, one day after this happens, I walk into the administrative office and everybody is really concerned because Savannah is sitting in a chair like so dramatically like, hi, Mom. And like when I saw her, I burst out laughing. I was like, oh my God, are you okay? And everybody looked at me like I was some really bad mom. Like, oh my God, why aren't you more concerned? But as we were walking out, she was walking really slow and actually didn't look good. So even I was a little concerned. I was like, oh my God, honey, are you okay? Until we got to the car when Savannah looks at me and goes, you know what, Mom? I feel better now. And I was like, Savannah, are you serious? And she's like, Mom, do you maybe want to go to Starbucks and have like a girls' day? And I was like, honey, what kind of question is that? You know I do.
Toxic best friend story time. So I had an off and on friendship with this one girl. In my freshman year, we became friends again. And she had this boyfriend named Nicholas. And they literally fought 24/7. And every time she would fight, she would be like, can you please fix this for me? So she would have me add him on Snapchat, fix it, and then block him. And guys, this literally was happening like 5 times a week. And then after she asked me to do that the first few times, I realized she started going through my phone. And when I say my phone, I mean my whole motherfucking phone. A bitch was going through my Snapchats, DMs, text messages, and I didn't know how to confront her because that's just weird. So the one day I was getting ready at her house because we were about to go out, and she was like, I'm grounded, can I use your phone real quick? And I was like, yeah, just let me Snapchat this last person back. And she goes, no, and rips the phone out of my hand. And she starts going through my Snapchat right in front of me. And I had a streak with this kid named Nick. She goes up to me and says, what the fuck is this? Like for part 2.
So today I went to church to confess one of my most recent sins to the priest. So I sat in the confession booth. I told the priest, I said, Father, I have sinned. And the priest wanted to hear all about it. So I said to him, I said, Father, last night I almost cheated on my wife. And the priest goes, what do you mean you almost cheated on your wife? So I told him, I said, Father, I was in a room with another girl. We got naked and all we did was rub each other. We didn't actually do anything. My priest turns to me and goes, rubbing together is the same thing as putting it in. Now for your sins, you must never see that woman again. You must say 5 Hail Marys and put $50 into the donation box. So anyway, I tell the priest I'm not going to see the girl again. I say my 5 Hail Marys and I walk out the door. So all of a sudden, my priest comes running after me saying, hey, I saw you. You didn't put $50 into the donation box. I looked at him and said, yeah, I did. I took the money and rubbed it against the box because it's the same thing as putting it in.
This is why you should always trust your gut. In the 1970s, a young couple decided to go for a late night hike in the woods. A couple minutes into their walk, and the man remembers thinking something's not right. He tells his girlfriend, but they just decide to ignore it and keep going, until he steps on something that felt really soft, like it was alive. Before he has a chance to see what he stepped on, they hear all this rustling in the bushes next to them, and they bolt. Years later, that couple turns on the TV, and a death row inmate who's about to be executed is being interviewed. And they ask him, was there ever a time that you were almost caught red-handed? He responded, yes, one time. I was in the woods, and a couple walked through, and the man actually stepped on the body of a girl I had just killed. I was hiding in the bushes just a few feet away. They didn't see me. That couple had run into one of the worst serial killers of all time, Ted Bundy.
Story time about how I catfished my boyfriend. I'd been dating my boyfriend Ben for around a year. We were really happy and he even moved in with me in my apartment. Everything was going great and I thought he could be the one. However, one day my friend Lacey sent me a screenshot of my boyfriend on a dating app. At first, I was hoping that maybe it was an old account. I didn't want to jump to conclusions if it was from before we started dating. The pictures that he had on the account didn't seem to be recent ones. I wanted to ask him about it and I almost did, but I had to be sure that he wasn't trying to play me. I called my friend Lacey and told her to super like him on the app. She's really pretty and they've never met, so I knew that he would match with her if he was still active on the app. After a few days, nothing happened. He hadn't matched or messaged her. I was so relieved that I even bought him a new jersey I knew he'd been wanting. I felt dumb even questioning his loyalty until I got an update from Lacey a few days later. He had matched with her on the dating app and messaged her. I was so mad I was seeing red. I was so close to going into the next room and going off on him, but I decided that I wanted to get back at him in a different way. I called Lacey and explained to her that I wanted to set him up and asked for her login information on the app, which she gave me. This is when things got interesting. This is why you should think twice about moving in with your friends. My friend Amy and I decided to get an apartment together. We've been friends for a while and she's the type of friend that I could never get sick of and always hang out with. The first issue we had was when she started bringing her boyfriend over a few nights a week, which was fine at first. However, he started coming over more frequently to the point where he was there 6 nights a week. Her boyfriend also always parked in my designated spot, leaving me nowhere to park. On top of that, Amy and I decided we would go shopping together for food every few weeks and split the grocery bill. But her boyfriend is over constantly eating all the food that we bought, and this guy can eat. Amy also complained that the AC bill is too high and we need to stop turning down the temperature so much, and I quote, open the windows and rough it. I went to work one day and came back and the apartment felt almost as hot as it was outside, which was over 100 degrees. My dog lives with us, so I always try to keep the apartment cool. I immediately checked on him and went to turn on the AC. But to my shock, Amy had taken the control panel off of the wall and hid it so I couldn't adjust the temperature. I called her furious and explained to her that she could have killed my dog, to which she replied, I'm not going to leave the AC on all day when we're gone for a stupid dog. This is when things took a turn for the worse.
I had a crush on my brother's best friend. We're gonna call him Pedro. One day, my brother and Pedro had a plan to go to the beach together, and then Pedro invited me. And I was like, let me check if I have something to do. I don't. I'm going. I'm gonna go, Pedro. Don't worry. The night before, I was like, I need to look scandalous. Like, so scandalous. So I remember I wore this 2-piece bathing suit. So long story short, the day came and we went to the beach. So we get to the water and immediately I go in. I wanted to show him, like, I'm a bra girl. Oh, this is the best part. So I'm coming out of the water and I'm trying to look like a baddie. Like, I'm trying to walk out all cute, like the hair is wet and everything. And I noticed Pedro was looking at my legs. So I was like, maybe he's trying to shoot his shot. So I went to go tell him something. And I was like, why do you keep looking at me? And he was like, look at your legs. I look at my legs. There's a whole ass piece of poop from the beach water.